So yesterday I went and saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny on the big screen. The first time I've seen any Indiana Jones film on the big screen. Very much like when I saw Star Wars The Force Awakens on the big screen, it was an experience for me. So part of my opinions on the film might be clouded by the fact that this is the first time I've seen an Indiana Jones film in theaters. But you know what? I still think I might be able to set that stuff aside, but this first section of my review will be entirely spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about spoilers at all. But to begin with, I did think it was a pretty good film. There's one part of the film that I feel like they could have handled a little bit better in the emotional part, but other than that, I thought it was a pretty good, solid film. I very much did enjoy it. My enjoyment might have been clouded by being a theater-going experience for me for a film franchise I've never seen on the big screen before. But even with that, I still very much enjoyed it. It had great action, great set piece, and even with that one little flaw I mentioned, the emotional, the story was all very good. Told the music was spectacular. Really, everything about the film was amazing. It was just one part which, sure, I'm harping on it a lot, but I'm only harping on it a lot because it was the only flaw I saw in a very solid film. Now, was this a spectacular film? I don't think so. It was just a good film. Um, Even though I've never saw Raiders or Last Crusade on the big screen, those are still, in my opinion, the best two Indiana Jones film. This film does not knock anything out of the park. It does not really try to anything new in that regard. It's not even like Temple of Doom or Kingdom of Crystal Skull, which for all its flaws, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, just like Temple of Doom, did try something new. This film didn't really feel like it was trying anything new, but rather just telling an Indiana Jones story. And one thing I really did appreciate is how this is not spoilers, though you may think it's this way, it might be, but how they took the fact that Harrison Ford is not in his prime, he's not physically in his prime, and thus Indiana Jones is not in his prime, and use that as part of the storytelling. They use that limitation to help tell their story. But that's just going to conclude my spoiler-free review section. Now let's actually talk about spoilers. And there is a lot to discuss. So I'm probably going to devote this first segment to talking about that one flaw, that one emotional storytelling flaw. And so this will be a major spoiler. So if you have not seen the film yet, do so. And if you don't care about spoilers, well, time to jump right on in. So just for a little context, the Dial of Destiny is a device created by Archimedes that the villain thinks is going to allow him to travel through time and correct the mistakes that led to the fall of the Third Reich of Nazi Germany. The main villain's a Nazi, and so that does kind of track a little bit. And very much a true believer in the cause of Nazism and not in necessarily the cultural personality that was in Nazi Germany. So that in some way makes him even more dangerous because he doesn't care about individual figures in the Nazi structure, including you know who, but he just cares about the organization, the ideology succeeding, and that makes him very dangerous. But thankfully, the device of Archimedes does not allow him to change time. Sure, they still time travel at the very end, but it takes him to the battle of the siege of Syracuse, which Indiana Jones was actually talking about at the very beginning of the episode. I did like how they tied all that together, episode and movie. But moving past my little gaffe there by so what Indiana Jones figures out is the device was created by Archimedes not to allow him to see into the future or travel through time, but rather to bring help to the siege of Syracuse. And we get clues of that sprinkled throughout, from a puppet show where the Centurions are fighting a dragon, to a moment where on Archimedes' tomb there's a phoenix with propellers, what gives there, and then modern for when the film was set, wristwatch on Archimedes, and Indiana Jones is sort of able to piece those clues together to figure out what was going on right there. Namely, when he saw the thing that I think Reese invented it to him, that what was going to happen was going to be, in a sense, a closed loop of time, was when the villain puts on that very wristwatch that Indiana Jones saw on the corpse of Archimedes. And that's essentially what happened. happen. And in Jones, in that past, he's tempted to stay behind in the past, and only from some persuasive argument by force from his granddaughter Helena Shaw, she literally knocks sense into him, does he return to the future. He wanted, or to the present day for them. He wanted to stay in the past, and this is where the emotional story of the movie kind of falls flat, because very much in all the Indiana Jones film, the MacGuffin is not the important part. It's whatever lesson Indiana Jones learns. And it felt like Helena Shaw learned that lesson better than Indiana did in the movie. She learned what was really important to her, connection with her father, not her connection with her father in the past, and then hopefully a new connection with her godfather, Indiana Jones. She lost that, and it seems like she was searching for that, and she went searching for cash instead by stealing artifacts and all that. But Indiana Jones tells her at one point, "You don't memorize your father's journals just for some cash," and that I think was an important part of her character story. And yeah, she learned that what was actually important to her, the connections of her life. That's a story Indiana Jones has learned multiple times in the previous film, even in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that was still very consistent. But here, that fell flat. He had to physically get a sense knocked into him. He wasn't. She didn't. She was arguing with him, but he didn't say, "Okay, you're right." And see where that's falling flat for me. Everything else was good except for that one moment. But in some ways, I think it does kind of make sense because Indiana reveals to Helena Shaw that if he could go back in time and change one thing, he would go back and convince his son not to enlist, because what we find out is that he dies in Vietnam. It's heavily implied it's Vietnam, but I think that's definitely what was set up, and he did it to spite his father, which is actually just hilarious there. But also because of that him and Marion break up again because he couldn't be there. He couldn't console her in her grief over losing Mutt. And I think that's very telling. So the reunion with Marion at the very end of the episode, while touching, I felt like it would have made more of an impact if he chose, like, yes, I need to go back and maybe try to reforge my connections. If Indiana Jones had that mentality, my only complaint about the episode or about the film would be gone. But even despite that, I still thought it was a good episode. The villain got his comeuppance because of the nature of the device. He couldn't travel in time and enact changes as he wanted. He was brought back to the siege of Syracuse, and the Romans and the Greeks took him out. Sure, not as magical as getting face melted or turned to dust or anything like, or large exposed brain like in Kingdom of Crystal Skull. But still, the MacGuffin's what led to the villain's downfall, which is very much a hallmark of the Indiana Jones franchise. And because there's many great action set pieces, many great new characters. I haven't even forgotten to talk about the character Teddy, who's very much in his relationship to Helena Shaw is not too dissimilar from Short Round's relationship to Indiana Jones in Temple of Doom. Though I think Short Round, had a much better role model initially. Though definitely, through this journey, Helena learned what's important, and I think will become a better role model for Teddy. And there's a few other things I can discuss. How basically the creepy crawly because you know how there was the pit of snakes and raiders and a few other crazy bug like stuff or creepy crawlies. Well, it's eels in this episode. Okay, they had a bug scene too, but eels. Unfortunately, I didn't see all that scene because I had to leave the theater to go to the bathroom. Yeah, that happens sometimes. But when I came back, guess who was freaking out? Indiana Jones. And yeah, eels look like snakes. So that makes sense. So even though I didn't see everything, it still does make sense to me. And there's a few other fine points I could mention, such as how the main villain, who's a Nazi physicist, mathematician, he's working for the United States in helping get men to the moon, and sounds like the U.S. is kind of humoring him for the search for the Dollar of Destiny to get him to help them get to space. But as soon as they're in space, the U.S. is willing to cut him off. But of course, his handlers from the CIA don't make it because he betrays them. Very common thing is those who work with Nazis but aren't Nazis are still punished the same as the Nazis. They still get their comeuppance in some way. So that is another common trend that you see in Indiana Jones, a failed deal. There's also, I think I mentioned the great action set pieces. Even the beginning with the CGI DH Harrison, well, not probably the best they could have done. No, that technology will never be 100% replacement for real actors, because it's just something gonna be lost, I think, in the computer. Um, they still did amazing job setting that up, being set at the tail end of World War II. And that prologue, not only did it just give us a great action set piece with a younger Indiana Jones, because a big part of everything later is Indiana, he couldn't do the stuff he physically did. There's literally a scene where him saying, like, basically complaining about everything hurting. Twice, actually. Once with Marion. And then, oh yeah, I should even talk about that. Like, I think they were getting a little frisky. And Indiana Jones takes his hat off the line for that. I don't know what's going on there, but I do think that was kind of an interesting choice there, but I did get a laugh from it. But going back to the prologue, so it's the end of an adventure like many of Indiana Jones prologues are, and he's trying to rescue the spirit of Longius. I hope I'm pronouncing that, from the Nazis on a specific Nazi plunder train. And if you don't know, the spear Longus is said to be the spear that pierced Jesus during his crucifixion. And of course, the one they found was actually a 50-year-old fake. But it is nice how the end of the beginning of this film, like all other Indiana Jones film, is the end of some other adventure, but still in some form or fashion sets up the adventure to come. In Raiders, that was introducing us to Belloc, and rival antagonist of Indiana Jones. In Temple of Doom, it was just introducing us to our main characters. In Last Crusade, it was actually a flashback, very much like this episode or this film, but it showed us Indiana Jones' character wanting to rescue artifacts from plunderers and have them belong in a museum. But that one did, just like this film, set up the adventure to come in with the actual MacGuffin, but kind of differently. In Last Crusade, it was very much. Indiana Jones, he went to his father for help, but his father's kind of not really present, even though physically being there, because his father was obsessed with finding the Holy Grail. While here, it's very much kind of the same thing. He finds he doesn't successfully find the Spear Longus because they only found a fake, but it did introduce him and us to the Dial of Destiny, the MacGuffin of this movie, and also introduce us to the villain. And of course, the villain's a crazy Nazi scientist who wants to, even after the war, wants to go back in time and change things so that way the Nazis win. Thankfully, Indiana Jones stops them by just letting the MacGuffin do its thing. And not too much I can break down with that one specific part. But then, this beginning is actually maybe even more similar to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where you're not only introduced to the villains, but also introduced to the MacGuffin itself in the same adventure. Hard to say for sure, but I did pick that up in my opinion. But one thing I also really liked about it is how this just gave us classic Indiana Jones fight. Like, I felt like this scene could very much happen in Raiders or in Last Crusade. Some things they could have done very differently, but it's just for like classic Indiana Jones, just beating up the bad guys who are trying to plunder treasure. And while this movie doesn't address all the holes and atrocities that the Nazis committed, but they committed a lot, namely the Holocaust, but that's not the only thing. But we don't need to delve into everything about why Nazis are bad and why Nazis are evil to make them a compelling villain. For Indiana Jones, we knew from Raiders that he hated Nazis, and by showing here that they're plundering artifacts that don't belong to them, for the purpose of Indiana Jones, that's all we need to know. We need to know that they steal artifacts that they don't belong to them, that belong to other people, other cultures, and that Indiana Jones dislikes them. That's what we need to know for the film to work. So to anyone, because apparently there was someone who was complaining that they didn't delve enough into breaking down the eras of Nazism, we don't need to break that all down. We saw them plundering a train and saw them having a plunder train with artifacts that don't belong to them, and we know Indiana Jones is opposed to them. That's all we need to know for this film. Now, if you want to knowing why they're evil. There's a better thing for that. It's called historical documentaries. It's called reading a book. Yeah, there's plenty of books you can read about this stuff. You don't need to have a film to break down into everything. Things don't need to be spoon fed to us all the time. Humans are generally intelligent. Now, I will admit, some humans probably need a bit to return to school because they're lacking in some things. But for this film, that's not the point of the film. The point of the film was kind of showing is that Dial of Destiny, sure, it was a closed loop. The villain couldn't change destiny. He couldn't make Nazism work because all I was going to do was send him back to the siege of Syracuse where he would get his comeuppance. That's all I was going to do for him. He was never going to succeed. And that, I think, is where I'm going to end the discussion on that topic because there's really a lot more to say, and that's what the comment section is for. And that is where I'm going to end my review. Feels a little jarring, I know, but you know what? That's alright. It's my video. I can do what I want. And I want to have a discussion going in the comment section down below. So let me know your thoughts. Let's build up this discussion. There is so much more we can talk about. Like I haven't even mentioned like the puzzle solving, how that was just spectacular, how they used trickery to give themselves a advantage over their villains to have a head start. Like there was many great things that they did, and it would take us forever to really discuss all of them. So that is actually where I'm going to conclude this review. But in summary and in conclusion, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was a good, solid film. Not the best Indiana Jones film, not the best film ever made, not the most poignant commentary film, but that's not what it needs to be. It needed to be a fun story with a good moral, and it had that. And I think that's all we can ask for. It was fun, it was enjoyable, and that's all we need. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, upvote, and share the video. Also consider subscribing and following the channel if you haven't done so yet, and to ring that bell on YouTube to get notified of when new videos release. The link tree in the description links to all my social media. Check it out if you are interested, and once again, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the force be with you, always.